This episode is brought to you by Progressive Commercial Insurance. Business owners, meet Progressive Insurance. They make it easy to get discounts on commercial auto insurance and find coverages to grow with your business. Quote in as little as 8 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliated and third-party insurers. Discounts and coverage selections not available in all states or situations.
Welcome back to the Epic Universal Podcast. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and this is the podcast where we cover the latest Universal news, rumors, and history. And as always, I'm joined by Eric Hersey, and this show actually gets posted on Halloween, October 31st. That's right?
That is correct. And depending on when you're listening, I might be hanging out with a little Lorax running around the streets, because that's what Miles is 100% orange. Leotard, orange face paint, giant eyebrows and mustache.
Yeah, Lauren was sharing. I guess you went to the Halloween event at the local zoo,
right?
And I think Miles found out it's a lovely outfit, but the giant mustache sort of makes it a little difficult to actually consume the candy you're collecting. So
yeah, the mustache came off. We had backups because they were originally on with the sticky tape, but Lauren was smart enough to get a sunglasses with a mustache and the eyebrows attached to the sunglasses, which I ended up wearing by the end of the night when he was doing his eating. But so we'll see how it goes tonight.
All right. Well, again, here's hoping he has a great time, being out and about as that Dr. Seuss character. But speaking of Halloween, got something cool in the mail just in the past week from our buddy BioReconstruct. And were you aware of these collector cards they're doing for Halloween Horror Night down in Orlando?
Yeah, isn't it that you got to go? It's the trivia the trivia app that you go to the different stands, right? You answer so many.
Yeah. So I thanks to our eye in the sky, I am holding a Sergio Navarro card that comes with genuine fake blood splatter. So it's like. It's one of these things where it's like I think I'll use this as a bookmark on the plane and frighten the person I'm sitting next to. Just sort of like, what the hell is that? So
but that's funny because as you speak of Halloween Horror Nights, it's ending in a couple days. I had to check to see exactly. It runs a couple extra days, so it's on the 2nd. It runs on both coasts. It's ending. And I thought this was a great opportunity for you and I to thank everyone for sending in their questions and coverage, because I think this will be the last Halloween, at least adjacent prep talk that we do for quite some time. So
yeah. Face it. Given the way Universal works, they will start constructing next year's mazes in April, May. So we'll be talking about the rumors as to what houses are coming. But yeah, for 2025, we're now sunsetting, so to speak. So anyone in particular you want to thank? Or?
Well, we've, this being the first real year where I completely understood the Halloween Horror Nights and so forth. I would definitely want Scott was super helpful sending us stuff throughout the year. Ashley, Chris, and of course you just mentioned BioReconstruct, the MVP, probably sending us all types of information about Halloween Horror Nights. So
I'd say ironic thing of this whole situation is this is a guy who's in a helicopter, I think 24/7. But at this point, I literally owe him. I am, if he calls at 3:00 in the morning and says, "I need you to take me to the airport," I have to do it.
You have to do it.
I have to do it. Given the way he's come through time and time again. I'm the 3:00 in the morning airport guy. So anyway, we have a lot to talk about on this show. And in fact, interesting. We're going to try to tie the feature in with the time of year. You want to tell the folks how we're going to do that?
Well, yeah. A couple things we're going to talk about. We'll talk about the 2024 Themed Entertainment Association Park and attendance results. All Universal Orlando ticket prices just came out for 2026, and of course for Halloween, we're going to talk about how Universal's failed attempt to launch a monster movie franchise, The Dark Universe, and how that all comes about. But But before we do that, I think it's time to acknowledge our show sponsor.
Oh, absolutely. Unlockmagic.com. And if you are planning a trip to Universal Orlando or the Walt Disney World Resort, please check out unlockmagic.com. Listeners to the Epic Universal podcast are saving up to 12% on theme park tickets, including discounts on after-hours parties like Mickey's Very Merry and Jollywood Nights. So be sure and visit unlockmagic.com and save today. And when you do, and you buy your tickets, say that Eric and Jim sent you. So, all right, we're now into the news portion of the show. And you were mentioning ticket prices and, some interesting strategies have emerged, right?
Well, over the last week that Universal has announced that the 2026 tickets came of sale. So everybody was talking about those. And then immediately, maybe 24 hours after, or we just noticed that there was an announcement that the 3-day park annual passes are temporarily unavailable. So that's kind of interesting. Primarily, Jim, I think a lot of it comes down to that Volcano Bay is not going to be open for the full 2026.
That's an excellent point. Okay. Yeah.
So I think when I think we've all been counting down. So I'm an annual pass holder myself. And one of the tough items we had to pills to swallow this year was we have annual pass. We can go into the parks pretty much without paying. And then you had to buy that extra Epic Universal ticket, right? So we were all kind of speculating, all right, in 2026, will we be able to get that added on? And there is no type of announcement. Doesn't look like we're going to get an annual pass added on, but maybe the pausing and the temporary unavailable of the 3-day ticket that's cause for speculations for some. So one of the major things that I would ask you is, what do you think? Do you think we'll get a annual pass add-on for Epic for 2026, or is that still too early? We're still going to try to get everyone to buy their individual tickets? Do you think the parks can handle all the annual pass holders? I think that's primarily the question most of us that are out there buying tickets or looking at annual passes want some speculation on.
I think you've nailed it in one. The big question, at least as far as the Universal Orlando Resort, is thinking right now is with Volcano Bay down for the better part of a year, right? I
think it starts October. So it's tail end, but still.
But you get the idea that suddenly with that out of the inventory, that is going to put additional strain on, the Universal Studios Florida, Islands of Adventure, and of course Epic Universe. And so, I hate to say this, but this would not be a great year to offer an Epic Universe annual pass, with the understanding that, when Volcano Bay goes down, the people who would be spending a day at that water park during their Universal Orlando Resort vacation have to go somewhere. So, and let's also be honest here. If they postpone sales of an Epic Universe annual pass to 2008, 2029, that gives them another year to, sort of strategize about, okay, what's our price point? What are we offering? Just to listen to you and Lauren talk sometimes about planning trips and working around blackout dates.
Yeah.
That's something definitely to consider. So,
yeah. And with this being said, I went over to Universal's website and just kind of mapped out still what's that break even point where you should have, because there's your standard, preferred, premier passes at the current rate with just the 2, and it's still you're still going to have to go multiple times a year for that to make sense. So it's quite interesting to see how that will adjust when you throw Epic in there. I can only imagine that the prices will go up quite a bit when you throw that third park on there. But for this year, so far, right now, we don't have any new information on the annual passes for it.
Okay. So, but that's for 2025 and 2026 going forward. If we pivot back to 2024, we actually have some information from the Themed Entertainment Association in regard to theme park attendance, and some interesting info came out of that.
Right. So I was listening to the Disney Dish, and I did not know that this is the third company in 3 years, I guess Len was saying, that has operated this. And I'm not necessarily sure how this whole works, but as a stats nerd, I love pulling this up, and I like to see where everybody ranks and what has changed. Well, it's no surprise that in 2024, the attendance for Universal was down compared to the previous year. And truth be told, I think a lot of the speculation is, well, for all those people that are planning trips, they were all kind of waiting, right? Most of them were waiting until May. If you're going to have a trip, you're going to say, hey, let's go down when the big attraction opens. So
yeah, I mean, well, and let's be realistic here. Just the whole notion of, yes, you could have gone to the Universal Orlando Resort in April, and but looked, off in the distance. I think at that point. Oh, weren't you among the first folks to get in?
They were testing in April.
Yeah.
We were one of those weirdos that actually did go down, but we already had it planned. It was just spring break, and it just so happened we got over there. But if we were once every 5-year type of family, then we probably would have said, all right, we're going to wait until later. We're not going to go in 2024. We're going to go in 2025 after May. Yep. So it would be interesting. This is 2024 data. So it'd be interesting to see how the 2025 comes out.
Oh,
and did we see a
absolutely.
giant spike? Did we see? Because right now, if you look at the data, it shows that Universal Studios Florida was ranked 13th and Islands of Adventure was 14th in the overall ratings. And we saw a drop of 2.6% for proper and then 5.5% for Universal, the Islands of Adventure. It'll be interesting to see where that goes in 2025. And I guess the question I have, Jim, what is the goal here, I guess, from something like this? Is Universal's goal to dethrone Hollywood Studios as the third park? You're never going to touch Magic Kingdom, right? Magic Kingdom is well above and behold. And then Epcot has a pretty large lead. Do you think Universal thinks that they can get above one of the Disney properties?
Well, look, Universal, especially in Orlando, is in this for the long haul. And, it is all about gaining incremental market share. I mean, face it, Disney is still the lead dog in Orlando. But, we've talked on the show, for example, about how the Endless Summer Resort, the one that's built down on iDrive, Universal flat out went into that project, telling locals that, look, we're going to operate this at a loss for 7 years because we want people to come to this resort, to like it, to bond to it, and then come back for their next their family vacation in Orlando. So, I think, if you're talking 10 or 15 years out and the way Universal is spending at the parks, what Mark Woodbury, the head of Universal Destinations and Experiences, recently said about being on the set of Wicked, and it's this is the theme park waiting to happen. Just I would imagine it's not going to be all that long that the Laneys of the world are like, Mom, Dad, no, we're not going to Disney first. We're going to Universal first. I need my Wicked fix.
Yeah.
And by the way, folks, that is our obligatory Wicked, mention in this week's show. Right there. There we go.
Right.
Okay, check that off if you had that on your bingo card.
There you are. So I think Epcot looked to have 12 million. Hollywood Studios had 10 million, and Universal was about almost 10. It was about 9.5. So it'd be interesting to see if that gap slightens, because I know since we started going to Universal, it was always we'd go down to Disney for 5 days, and as of right now, Animal Kingdom is the one that's getting we're dropping that off. So we typically will always go to the Kingdom, we'll always go to Epcot. Hollywood Studios usually gets a day, but now we're definitely doing Universal and Islands and Epic. So it's just, there are parks that are going to drop, and we would probably see, Animal Kingdom is below, and I think Hollywood Studios would be the next, or maybe Epcot, depending on what your flavor is. So it'll be interesting to see. I think they're all just looking for their numbers to grow. And one thing that the reports show is that it's kind of stabilized post-COVID, where there were some fluctuations in the United States over the years, but now it's pretty stabilized. So I think we can kind of predict where we're going, and now we can just look at who's taking whose market share, or is the whole industry growing. So.
Yeah, well, that's again, when you look at the amount of construction that's going on at the Disney parks, whether it's Monsters Inc. Land, Encanto. I mean, Epcot for now is paused, but the Kingdom is going crazy between Piston Peak and Villains Land, and and there are folks who are whispering rather loudly that Epcot's about to get some stuff turned on as well. So, going to be interesting 2008, 2029, 2030 to see, what each of these places decides they're going to do to have you and Lauren have that exact same conversation. How many days at Disney and how many days at Universal, and where do we start?
Right. Well, one thing that we're definitely already considering is not necessarily heading to Florida, but heading out to California. It's already in our discussion. And there was a new guided themed tour park added over at the Universal Hollywood. Did you see this at all?
Yeah, and it kind of interesting that this is sort of a middle thing, right? I mean, it falls between the standard ticket to get into the park and, of course, the high-end VIP experience. But do you want to tell folks what they get? What is it? It's $200 a person, right?
Yeah, it starts at $200 and it's just an add-on. It basically gets the guest a guided tour, unlimited express pass access, a meal, and valet parking. The main thing is you don't get the studio backlot experience. So from what I gathered, mind you, I have yet to go out there, but for the most part, the biggest difference is with the VIP, you get the actual backlot trolley tour and a gourmet meal, right? So and that's in the $400-$500 range based off of what I understood. If you get that VIP experience, and this is you get a lot of the stuff with it, but you don't get that backlot tour. So I just don't know. I imagine for me, that's the thing I'm looking most forward to. I think I heard that it's the last of the studio backlot tours that still go around. So I think that's what I want to see. But I guess if you've seen it, been there, done that.
They do things like you literally get off of the golf cart or the Pargo, excuse me, and wander into the prop shop and
right.
That sort of thing. So, I guess it will be interesting to try the middle distance version, and especially if folks have done the VIP, and if anybody does it before Eric and I get out west, because we're still eyeballing FanFest for this year, right? Which starts what?
It all depends on when a darn spring break is for me, and when those kids have those breaks. But yeah, we're eyeballing some stuff here.
Okay. All right. And let's see what else. Well, of course, this show drops on October 31st, Halloween night, and that is also the night that the IMAX version of Back to the Future, celebrating the 40th anniversary as this film appears in theaters, right?
Yeah. And I checked it out. There's not only just IMAX, but they're bringing it to a lot of different theaters. So the AMC's, there are, you basically can see Back to the Future in theaters right now in most markets. So we talked about it a lot last week and had some great feedback, and lots of people shared their stories with it. But if you go check it out in the theaters, if you haven't seen it for a while, but more importantly, if you liked what you heard last week and you want some more, let us know, because you said you had a lot more stories about Back to the Future.
In fact, we'll do just one before we head out to the ad break. And again, this comes from Future Boy, the book that Michael J. Fox and Neil Fortenberry did. Back to the Future, My Journey Through the Space-Time Continuum. And Michael J. Fox talks about the second night that he shot on Back to the Future. And the interesting thing, Eric, it has a Disney tie. Because the scene they shot is when he arrives in the future and then, crashes into that barn.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, it turns out that barn is at the Disney Ranch at Golden Oaks. And in fact,
really?
just over the hill in Newhall, California, from where just over the hill from where a certain Imagineer Jim Shule lives.
Yeah.
But yeah, they spent 2 nights shooting there, and I want to say the last thing Michael did, was the shot where he drives over one of the pine trees, which is why the Twin Pine Mall goes to the Lone Pine Mall.
Right.
But by the way, folks, you might have actually seen in the past week some footage that was shot at the Disney Ranch. Did you see the footage on social media of that drone test of the new nighttime show that sadly I believe is going to Disney Adventure World in France.
No, I saw some drones, but it's hard for me to know what's AI and not anymore. So I saw something that looked a little too good to be true, and I'm like, I just kept scrolling. I'm like, oh, that's probably some fake. But you're telling me that actually is that's real leaked footage?
Well, that's somebody standing. In fact, I'm not going to tell you that I perhaps stood in the same place at the edge of Golden Oaks Ranch. But yes, there is actually a parking lot at the edge of the Disney Ranch there. And evidently they were doing this test at night, and somebody grabbed some very impressive footage. So, but as Eric mentioned, we have Back to the Future stories up the wazoo. And if you folks want to hear more about that movie or the ride for the parks, let us know. Or for that matter, I want to say, Stingray Travel actually came up with a great suggestion for a feature story. It turns out prior to Universal Studios Florida opening, they shot a preview movie for the park, which starred Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown. And the notion was that Doc Brown really wanted to go to Universal Florida. And then he's like, well, I got a time machine. I'll just jump ahead, 6 or 8 months and go to the park. And it had him visiting all of the attractions in the park. But what's so funny is it's a construction site. So they shot them at all of the Universal Hollywood equivalents, so it's like, what's fun about this preview film is if you look past Doc Brown, a lot of times you're like, hey, that's Universal Hollywood from 88, 89. That's kind of cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, anyway, folks. All right. On that note, we're going to take a quick break here. But when we get back, we're going to take a look at Dark Universe, the film franchise that we almost got that inspired the land, that just opened at Epic Universe. But first, this.
Introducing Meta Ray-Ban Display, the world's most advanced AI glasses. With a full color display built into the lens of the glasses, it's there when you need it and gone when you don't. Send and receive messages, translate or caption live conversations, collaborate with Meta AI, and more. Be one of the first to try Meta Ray-Ban Display. Visit meta.com/Meta Ray-Ban Display to book a demo and find your pair.
I turned off news altogether.
I hate to say it, but I don't trust much of anything.
It's the rage bait.
It feels like it's trying to divide people.
If we got clear facts, maybe we could calm down a little.
NBC News brings you clear reporting. Let's meet at the facts. Let's move forward from there. NBC News, reporting for America.
And we're back, folks. Now, Eric, again, if I say the name Dark Universe, especially on this podcast, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, it's the land now down at Epic Universe. That's all I would think of.
Yeah, I mean, and that's understandable. I mean, home to Monsters Unleashed, the Frankenstein Experiment, which many people are saying is the best theme park ride they've ever been on, and Curse of the Werewolf, nice coaster. Likewise, interesting eateries like Das Steakhouse and the Burning Blade Tavern. And then there's an unfortunate makeup experience, but we won't talk about that today. On the other hand, if I asked you this very same question back in 2016, 2017, again, what is Dark Universe? You likely would have responded in a very different way. You'd say, oh, yeah, that's that Universal thing that they're trying to get an MCU going. a series of interconnected movies that celebrate the Universal classic monsters. And yeah, Eric, that's true. In fact, there is this amazing photo out there that, well, you would find, amusing because it is so clearly photoshopped. But it's all of the actors who had agreed to be part of upcoming Dark Universe movies. There was Johnny Depp, who was going to play the Invisible Man. There was Angelina Jolie, who was going to play the Bride of Frankenstein. I want to say Benicio del Toro was actually going to play Frankenstein's monster, and not to mention that they had top writers and directors lined up. Alex Kurtzman, Bill Condon, who just come off of directing Disney's Beauty and the Beast. Anyway, this ambitious project, it gets announced in November of 2015. So we're actually coming up on the decade anniversary.
Yeah.
All right. And then by October of 2017, Dark Universe suddenly placed on hold, all because the first film in this proposed series, a reimagining of Universal Pictures' 1932 classic, The Mummy, starring Tom Cruise. And by the way, it's on all the time this week. Again, we're coming into Halloween, and I must have seen it 5 and 6 times. I mean, partial little bits of it. It's on HBO all the time. But that Mummy fails to sell the huge amount of tickets worldwide that Universal executives were expecting. But now, on the heels of not doing the numbers that Universal was hoping for, the studio reverts to doing non-interconnected films that use the Universal classic monsters as inspiration. I mean, we're talking about, for example, that Invisible Man movie from February of 2000, the one with Elizabeth Moss. Likewise, the Wolfman movie that Universal released at theaters earlier this year, January 17th, 2025. Now, mind you, Eric, these are were fairly low-budget projects. For example, the Invisible Man movie, they only spent $7 million to make it. I guess that's the thing. When you part of your cast is invisible, you can save bucks. All right.
I was going to say, when you said Johnny Depp was going to be the Invisible Man earlier, I'm like, is he just going to be the voice? Like, do you really need him there?
It's called, literally phoned it in. On the other hand,
right.
The Wolfman movie, that actually cost Universal $25 million to make. But again, not chump change, but from that particular production price point, it's relatively easy for a film to turn a profit. I mean, if you go by the Hollywood math, that you need to make at least 3 times your production costs before your film moves into the black. So taking that into account, when you are a big budget movie like Tom Cruise's The Mummy, where depending on who you talk to at Universal, that thing either cost $125 million to make or $195.
So you could have made about 10 to 20 different Invisible Men for the same price.
Yeah, and more to the point, in both of those cases, either end of what the actual price point was, that film had to have made $400 million to $600 million to be a success. And at the end of the day, when all was said and done, Tom Cruise's version of The Mummy only pulled in $410 million globally, which not nearly what the studio was looking for. But again, the real irony here is on the heels of Universal Pictures' initial attempt at getting a horror-themed action-adventure franchise up and running in the early 2000s. By the way, folks, this is Stephen Sommers' follow-up to his, those hugely popular Mummy movies that he made for Universal, the ones that starred Brendan Fraser. In fact, you may recall, folks, that Eric and I talked about this film, Van Helsing, with Hugh Jackman. In fact, on this podcast, I want to say it was a Halloween show for last year, Eric.
I think so. I remember us trying to watch it multiple. I think you watched it multiple times.
Well, same thing.
In different settings, yeah.
But no, it's the Mummy Revisited. It was like I turned at HBO. Oh, I get to watch another, a different 15 minutes of Van Helsing. But anyway, on the heels of Van Helsing costing 170 to make, and then only doing $300 million worth of business when it went out into theaters in May of 2004, the studio did what you might expect, Eric. It immediately canceled plans for Van Helsing 2, and then began to explore the idea of doing standalone films that then honored, paid tribute to the Universal classic monsters. Now, what's fascinating about this is that in 2008, the movie that really seemed to be moving forward was a reimagining of The Creature from the Black Lagoon, with Gary Ross, who, by the way, his dad, Arthur Ross, was actually one of the writers of the script for the original Creature from the Black Lagoon movie back in 1954. He was handling the screenplay, and you'll love this, all right? Breck Eisner, Michael Eisner's son, had been tapped to direct this movie for Universal. And this thing, Eric, got within inches of going into production. I mean, Universal actually flew the creative team down to Peru and Brazil, where they then scouted locations along the actual Amazon, and supposedly they found the perfect lagoon to shoot on location for the Black Lagoon.
Jim, why didn't this happen? What the heck? This is what I'm looking for. You get an Eisner, you get my favorite monster. Why?
2007, 2008 writer's strike.
Oh, gee.
And by the time that gets resolved, there's also a management change at Universal. Mark Schmugger and David Lind are out as co-heads of the studio, and Adam Fogelson is now Universal's new chairman, and turns out not a fan of the Black Lagoon, but he likes the Wolfman. So this is why development on Universal's new Creature from the Black Lagoon movie immediately stops, and they begin work on a brand new Wolfman movie, which is going to take its inspiration from the Lon Chaney film that Universal released to theaters back in December of 1941. By the way, just 2 days after Pearl Harbor. And it made a ton of money. I mean, you look at that and it's like, I guess America needed a distraction, wanted to be scared. And it's one of these things where it's like, being dragged into World War II isn't scary enough. It's like,
we need more hair.
We need more. There we go. All right. But again, the problem of having a brand new head of your studio is now all the people at Universal who work directly under Adam Fogelman are now trying to make their new boss happy. So there is a lot of second guessing going on in regard to this Wolfman remake as it gets ready to go before the cameras. And first of all, film's original director, Mark Romanek, he's let go less than 2 months after this thing is supposed to begin shooting. And by the way, this is January of 2008. And there's now a frantic search for a new director for Universal's Wolfman reboot, because they had already announced that this film is going to go into theaters on November 14th, 2008. So this thing has to be in front of the... No, that absolutely. It has to be in front of the cameras no later than the 3rd of March.
They say, hey, you got those old Teen Wolf costumes? That's going to be the budget. We're going to throw those on. That no CG here.
Well, no. By the way, I have to ask a question here, and just again, think about this. You are making a horror movie. Not only that, you're making a horror movie based on a Universal classic monster. Why exactly are you sending this out into theaters 2 weeks before Thanksgiving? I mean, but 2 weeks before Halloween. I get, all right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, just looking at the amount of money that Universal has made from putting Black Phone 2 out into theaters right now. I mean, that would seem to be the smart way to go. But it's like, let's let's frighten the people who've just had turkey. All right, they're loaded up with tryptophan. They're falling asleep in the theater. Why do all right. Anyway, by the way, they do find a director. Joe Johnston, again, Disney guy, guy who had helmed Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and The Rocketeer. And the thinking at Universal was, all right, Joe's done movies that feature visual effects, so he's going to be okay on Wolfman. More to the point, he shot Jurassic Park 3 for us in 2001.
Okay.
So we know this guy, we trust this guy. But here's the thing, Eric, he's got to shoot a gothic horror movie. He's got, and they actually got stars. They got Anthony Hopkins is in this thing.
Okay.
Benicio del Toro, Emily Blunt, Hugo Weaving from all the Matrix movies. But it has to be in the can by June 23rd. He's only got 80 days to shoot this thing. And also because of what happened with Van Helsing back in 2004, Johnson is told going into this thing, it's like, well, look, we love you, really do. And we're very grateful you've come into this project on short notice. You're going to have half the budget Van Helsing had. You got $85 million. So go.
Yeah.
And please forgive me for making this dad joke, but things get a little hairy on Joe Johnson's Wolfman movie on its way to the big screen. We'll get to that in the second half of today's feature.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and LifeLock has tips to protect your identity. Use strong passwords, set up multi-factor authentication, report phishing, and update the software on your devices. And for comprehensive identity protection, let LifeLock alert you to suspicious uses of your personal information. LifeLock also fixes identity theft, guaranteed or your money back. Stay smart, safe, and protected with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
I already love same-day delivery with Shipt, but it's so much better since I signed up for Target's Circle 360. Why? Because I no longer pay price markups from the majority of stores through Shipt. Only a handful of alcohol retailers and items don't count. That means no markups on groceries, pet food, even home goods and makeup. So to recap, I have more time to catch up on life while someone shops for me, and I spend less. It's a win-win. Order now at shipt.com/360. Terms apply.
Anyone can follow. It takes something special to be an original, which is why the 2025 Lincoln Navigator SUV arrives with new ways of surrounding you in luxury, including the ultra-wide 48-inch panoramic display and the multi-sensory Lincoln Rejuvenate experience. A true original never stops evolving. So meet the 2025 Navigator, the original that's all new and better than ever. Learn more at Lincoln.com. Lincoln and Navigator are trademarks of Ford or its affiliates.
And we're back. Eric, there's an old joke in Hollywood that when it comes to making movies, you can make it fast, you can make it good, and you can make it cheap. But you can't do all three of these things at the same time. And in the case of Universal's Wolfman remake, the decision to go with a smallish budget and a very tight production schedule resulted in a somewhat less than stellar film. Mind you, Joe Johnston did the very best he could, given the situation he was placed in. Again, he's a replacement director, hired just weeks before Wolfman has to begin production. And likewise, the cast did the best they could, given the accelerated production schedule. But long story short, Adam Fogelman, again, the new chairman of Universal Pictures, sees the first cut of Wolfman and goes, woof. Okay, nope. This won't do. Let's delay the film's release and see if we can fix this thing in post. So Wolfman's release date slides from November 14th, 2008 to February 13th of the following year, 2009. And again, Eric, It opens the day before Valentine's Day.
Right.
Oh, honey, come on. Here's my idea of a romantic evening. We'll get you dinner, and then we'll take you to Wolfman. What do you think? I'm the dream date, right?
So I just wonder, Jim, why if they just would have took the time in the first place and just it's all ended up the same. It sounds like, well, all right. It's just crazy.
No, it is. It is. And more to the point, as they're working to make that February release date, you realize, no. And so they push it off now to April. And by the time they're staring down the barrel of April, they realize, no amount of editing is going to fix this. We need to shoot new footage. We need to shoot new scenes. But of course, the cast is scattered to the four winds. So it takes a while to get everybody back, and it's like, can you make this date? Can you, so it's not till early May of 2009 that, they're able to get the cast together back in the UK, shoot the footage that they think will save the film, cut it in, and this is why the release date ends up being November 6, 2009. So again, now we're 3 weeks out for Thanksgiving. And again, we miss Halloween!
Right. Couldn't you have gave it a week? At least you could have had the first open it on the 31st. It sounds like that would have been the same day of the week.
I don't understand this. It makes no sense. All right. But anyway, downside of all of this post-production work, having to shoot the new scenes, having to fly the cast members back in to shoot this stuff, the $85 million that Wolfman was supposed to be shot for turns into $150 million, which is kind of unfortunate when you only sell $142 million worth of tickets worldwide.
That's real bad. I know Hollywood math is tricky, but that one that's tricky for real math.
There we go. So the pattern holds. Remember there were like 4 years between Van Helsing and when we got Wolfman. So another break, but 5 years later, Universal is doing some survey work, and they find out that there seems to be appetite out there among moviegoers for a new Dracula movie. But a Dracula from a different angle, that with the notion of, especially on the heels of the Twilight movies, now we love vampires. So notion, now it's like, what if Dracula were a tragic romantic figure? So Alec Proyas starts work on a project he calls Dracula Year Zero, and with the notion of this is his origin story. And he actually lines up Sam Worthington to play the lead role in this tragic romantic tale, which, by the way, to save money, they're going to shoot in Australia. And things are going great until Proyas submits his Dracula Year Zero production budget to Universal Management, and they freak out because even with shooting in Australia, they're still going to have to put up more money than they did for Wolfman. And no. So they let Proyas go, and they then begin casting around for a new director. For a story that Universal is now calling Dracula Untold. And what they end up doing is they hire Gary Shore, straight out of film school in Ireland, had done a student film that got a lot of people in Hollywood excited, and they then hire Luke Evans to play the film's title role. Now, interesting part of the story, Eric, to keep the cost of making Dracula Untold down, they shoot it in Northern Ireland. And again, remember, Gary Shore is from Ireland, and as I understand it, having an Irish director and a crew from that same country qualified Universal for all sorts of rebates and tax breaks. So, so that helps keep the cost of making Dracula Untold down to about $70 million. They shoot from August to November of 2013. But none of this happens in a vacuum, folks. And Marvel's The Avengers had come out in theaters the previous year, May of 2012, and had made $1.5 billion at the worldwide box office. And then 1 year later, here comes Iron Man 3, comes out May 2013 and sells $1.2 billion worth of tickets. And suddenly, there's all these people in Hollywood like, how do I get me one of those? I mean, a series of movies where the characters can then intermingle and get people excited about the other upcoming films in the series. And you have to understand, the folks at Universal are watching this go on at Disney, and they're starting to get ticked off. All right, because first of all, Universal feels like, we invented this. I mean, you go back to March of 1943. We put out Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and two characters from two different films meet together, and big box office, and they then perfected that in June of 48, and that's when Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein comes out. And no lie, Eric, that movie made so much money it actually saved the studio. This is right after the war. They are, they're running on fumes, and this thing filled up the coffers at the studio and kept Universal going. But what especially galled the executives of Universal is they felt like, well, God damn it, it's the post-credit scene in The Incredible Hulk, which Universal, remember, that was made at Universal.
Yeah.
They sent that out into theaters in June of 2008. They feel like that set this whole thing in motion, that how one MCU movie blends right into the next MCU movie. And of course, what they're talking about is that scene at the end of The Incredible Hulk where Tony Stark shows up at that bar and meets with, General Thunderbolt Ross and says, hey, we're putting a team together. Now, to be fair here, Iron Man 1 actually did this first. I mean, and that one came out in April of 2008, 2 months earlier. But that's the one that has the end credit scene where we see that Nick Fury is actually broken into Tony Stark's house and is there to talk with him about the Avengers Initiative. But be that as it may, the folks at Universal are like, why can't we do something like that? Why can't there be a scene at the very end of Dracula Untold that teases the next movie? One that something we could do that with the Universal classic monsters that would be like all these Disney Marvel movies and what they're doing with the MCU. So this is why, Eric, after production of Dracula Untold had wrapped, Universal actually recalls a handful of the performers for that film. To be specific, Luke Evans, who played the title character Dracula, Sarah Gadon, who played Marina of Vlad the Impaler's wife, as well as Mina Murray. This is a woman in present-day London who's supposed to be the reincarnation of Vlad's wife, Marina. And then Charles Dance, who played the master vampire in this movie. That's the creature who originally turned Vlad the Impaler into Dracula. So Vlad could then defend Transylvania from an invasion by the Ottoman Empire. But anyway, in this scene that was shot to be the new ending of Dracula Untold, Dracula seems to meet Mina, who again looks exactly like his centuries dead wife Marina, entirely by chance on the streets of London. But we then see that the master vampire is looking on, from a nearby spot as this meeting happens. And as the master vampire says, "Let the games begin," we then realize that nothing about this meeting between Dracula and Mina happened by chance. So anyway, that scene was added to Dracula Untold after the fact to then give Universal Pictures the opportunity to grow their own MCU. And again, not a Marvel Cinematic Universe, but a dark universe, one that was supposed to tell interconnected stories involving the Universal classic monsters, only this version of those characters would be reimagined as tragic figures who, though they're often feared and shunned by humanity, are often here saving us from ourselves. So how did we get from here to that one Mummy movie? Or for that matter, how did the Dark Universe idea survive the cancellation of this would-be film franchise for Universal Pictures and then become the inspiration for, I think, what Eric himself would tell you? Well, I mean, I think Hunter would have a different opinion. But you'd say that Dark Universe is the best land in the park, right?
Oh, my favorite. Sure,
okay.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. So, all right. But we will get to that part of the story on the next edition of the Epic Universal podcast. But one final thing before we go. Another thing that made Universal executives absolutely crazy is that, well, what does Joe Johnston end up directing after he finishes working on that Wolfman reboot? Captain America, the First Avenger.
Oh, no way. I had no idea. I had no idea. That's my favorite. I love Captain America series. I love that one.
In fact, that's the thing. Kevin Feige talked about how he looked at the movies that Joe Johnston had made, in particular, The Rocketeer and October Sky, and it was like, this is the guy. This is the perfect guy for this. And it, because it had a decent budget, and Johnston was actually given the time to do proper, pre-production, and it turns out to be his biggest film, the top earner of his entire directing career. So, hey, what a surprise. People can actually do good work if you let them do good work. Go figure.
Yeah. Well, geez. No. I'm excited to hear how this one all comes about. I'm very intrigued to see this Dracula. I haven't seen the movies. I at that point in time, I wasn't paying much attention. So I wonder if this one did well enough in the box office. Must not have got people too excited or so forth. But I guess we'll figure that out next week.
No, and just a little teaser. It did okay. It actually made, I want to say, over $300 million, which again, when you have a production budget of 70, it's like, hey, you made money. And so then there began to have conversations about, well, okay, does Luke Evans show up in the Mummy movie? And we'll talk about that on the next show. And speaking of which, folks, that's going to do it for this week on the Epic Universal podcast. And by the way, if you have topics and suggestions for future ideas like Stingray Travel, again, that great idea about the Universal Studios Florida teaser movie with Christopher Lloyd, feel free to send those along through social media or connect with us right here at Jim Hill Media. And anyway, on behalf of Mr. Hersey, thank you for listening, and we will be back next week.